Disagreeableness will lead to misery. Let that statement sink in for a while. I don't say that disagreeableness in every aspect. But the thing is, if you're really full on disagreeable, you will become miserable because your relationships will fade away. They will break apart and you will feel lonely, and therefore you will experience misery at its finest. So, if you're really disagreeable, the thing is, if you're in an argument or like just in a normal talk with somebody, talking about several topics, and you will come to the point where you have different opinions on something. And if you're really disagreeable, obviously, you're likely to show that you disagree with the person you're talking to, and nothing wrong with that. But if it's really a big part of you and you are really disagreeable, the thing is, what most likely will happen is that you are trying to convince your partner, like the person you're talking to at the moment, you're trying to convince the person or to win the argument because you have a different opinion and you want to share it and you believe that's the right opinion to have, the correct one, and the other one is wrong. And the problem with that is that if you continuously do that, that you won't have much relationships left, because relationships will break apart on this thing. This would likely be the reason to. And in essence, you start conflicts where they don't need to be conflicts in the first place. Because you cannot let a statement that you disagree with stay there and not say anything about it. You can't do that if you're so disagreeable. But that is actually an important trait to have. It's really important to be able to listen to the person you're speaking to be able to listen. And what you really should focus on is not to win an argument, not to convince or not to try to convince the other person of your perspective, but what you should do is try to understand. Actually, try to understand where the other person is coming from and why they have a different opinion than you. And before you completely understand the perspective they're coming from, I think you shouldn't bring a lot of arguments against their opinion, because you should first get an overview of what they actually believe, why they actually believe it. And if that's really how you focus on this thing and how you handle it, I think the relationships have a better foundation than if you're just plainly disagreeable all the time, and that would probably just destroy them and you would get alone and miserable. For me personally, I really struggle with this a lot, especially with my family, because I'm naturally a really disagreeable person, I would say. and especially with my father, but with my family in general as well. It was it was pretty tough, and it was definitely a lesson to learn, that disagreeableness can actually be a disadvantage for you if you don't really get how to actually apply it and how to handle it the right way. And in the past, I definitely got into way too many conflicts about plain nonsense that wouldn't be relevant at all, just to prove the point and just to convince people that I'm correct. And obviously, that's pretty narcissistic of me. Yeah, but that's how it was, and I think I learned definitely a lesson from that. And I just want to share that so you don't make the same mistake as I did in the past. And what gets hand in hand to what I just told you is that you try to be humble. It's really a hard thing to do for a lot of people because it's probably not in our human nature to do that. But if you actually become humble, then you are more likely to try to understand and to listen to the other person. And that's so essential for relationships. And also, you will get into deeper relationships if you actually are able to listen. Because nowadays, so few people can actually do that. It's really astonishing. But if you are one of these people that are able to do that, that are capable of doing that, then people will treat you very differently and will tell you things that you wouldn't be able to get to know to if you wouldn't imply these things. If you aren't humble, if you aren't trying to really understand the perspective of the other person. And if you really don't focus on being disagreeable and just put that a little bit aside, that could really improve a lot for you. And I'm convinced that this really might help you. Stay focused.